using my platform, the key difference is that our clients are operating directly on top of OpenAI rather than through a chatbot, which is the consumer interface. And so we allow an unbridled access to the full robustness of AI.
Today on Customerland, Mark Ogne, who is CEO of Symplexity AI. And I'll let him do kind of a better introduction than I'm sure I ever could on what Symplexity is. But Mark and I had a conversation several weeks ago where I got to find out really what he's doing and what his plans are for this really neat platform. So I thought this is an ideal place to kind of expand on that, explore it, and bring it to this little kind of corner of the world. So, Mark, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Right on, Mike. Thank you very much. And looking forward to knowing your following better. And hopefully this is a cause for helping to engage with some of them.
Well, yeah, I think so. It's a fascinating idea you've got, and well, I won't editorialize just yet, except to say that after our call a couple of weeks ago, I kind of had to sit back and go, huh, he's right. I never thought about it that way. And the use cases are giant, many and big. So, with that, what the heck is Symplexity AI? What is it?
So it is what I would call an expert trained custom language model. So taking a step further back as to kind of how I got here, um, big deal selling person to an operating executive to marketing. I've been around this block 3 or 4 times now. And I think always I found myself to be an innovator. So I've won awards and things like that around website personalization in the 2000s and employee advocacy and social media marketing in the 2010s, account-based marketing in the late 2010s, and been CMO multi times in early, later stage companies. And the really good part about leaving a role is when you have something really cool to go play with. And
Right.
so this was the impetus for me is I had been dabbling with the different language models and things like that. And I now all of a sudden had the time to do something like really dig down deep. And what I found is not many people really understand some basic fundamental things like ChatGPT is not the same thing as OpenAI. And when I say that to people, some will, contradict me and say, well, no, it's, the same company. It's like ChatGPT and, what we look at for Claude and all the other tools, they're a consumer interface into an enterprise product. And so I went through my Gladwellian 10,000 hour tour here. And, when I mentioned I'm an innovator, part of that is just probably that I'm pig-headed and I'll just keep shooting at something until I finally figure it out. And that's probably actually a trait that I have. So I'm just tenacious that way. And I had a consulting project and we were going to work on messaging and website and things like that. And I thought, wow, this would be a great time to start using code interpreter or the ability to upload files into I use ChatGPT a lot. And so I thought, fantastic. I'll look up all these podcasts and, whatever webinars and things like that, find the transcripts, load them into the AI solution, have them interpret it for me. And 2 months later, I still hadn't figured it out fully because ChatGPT or any of the other tools will only allow you to load. Well, they'll physically allow you to load. I've loaded 50-page documents before. And I'm here to tell you that a 1 hour transcript is 30 to 40 pages of unstructured text, and it'll read the first 3 to 4 pages until you read the whole thing. And it
Right.
didn't. And so
Yeah, I've got my own experience with that. That's a really interesting one. I don't think anybody really understands that.
No, and it won't tell you. It won't, in fact, I would try to trick it and say, tell me what the very last word in this transcript is. And then say, okay, wait, let me go think. And then it's going to run something different, which is, okay, I'm just going to go to the very end and it'll say done or whatever. And it's like, okay, but I could not get it to read the whole thing. And so I started looking at OpenAI developer forums, and I'm a technical business person that technical people laugh at when I say that. So, but I actually connected some Python from Git to OpenAI APIs in Slack last fall, about a year ago now, and had this epiphany. It's like, wait a minute, I don't need to use ChatGPT, meaning I can go directly to the AI. And the reason I thought that was something that was interesting is because the developer forums, I'd hear people talk about, pushing megabits per second into OpenAI. And I thought, oh, that's got to be horrible. I can't even put up, you know, 6,000 characters in a prompt and have it freak out, like they've got to have hallucinations that are just like ridiculous.
Mhm.
And they don't. They don't. And
So
it
what's the
is.
difference? What are they doing that the rest of us regular people don't know about?
So that is what drove me into that technical challenge of, can I get away from the GPT, the chat part? I mean, so when you pay by the month, you get throttled, you get constrained because AI it's really super expensive. I mean, one time I read about Meta and they were going to get 600,000 processors, and I calculated. They said somebody said, yeah, but they're sustainable renewable energy company. I said, okay, well, what does that really mean? It was like 800 acres of solar panels,
Wow.
120 major windmills, and enough batteries volume to fill up the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, which holds over 100,000 people, and still have 20 million cubic feet of battery in the parking lot. Like, these things consume so much power, and just the hardware itself is incredibly expensive. So $20 a month, what they give you, think of it as a person, the brain space. It's called context window, but they call it brain space, or they call it context window. I call it brain space. They'll give you 8 to 16, maybe 32K of brain space. And then when you fill that up, it tries to get rid of the excess. And that's where hallucination tends to occur because in the pay by the month, they have to try to make money out of this. So much money in power and equipment and things like that. So they use one, a smaller brain, and two, the way that they get rid of the excess thought is first in, first out. It's cheaper to do it that way. So if you said the world's best thing in the very first prompt that you entered into the system, it'll be the very first thing that it gets rid of when you hit that brain space, hit that context window. The other part that's very human-like is how much can I speak out and how much can I hear back? So I mentioned before, like, hey, it'll take a 40 or 50 page document of a transcript. It'll read the first 4 or 5 pages, though. Well, why is it doing that? Because to absorb all of that content is a larger context window than it's able to use, one, but two, it's expensive. It's expensive to have it ingest all of that information, and then it'll give you back, I don't know, 700 words at most. You go
Right.
to try to go to 2,000, and it just starts, speaking gibberish. So it's the brain space and the communication back and forth. It's called context window, and then thread volume, I guess you could call it. Now, operating directly into OpenAI or into a large language model, first, the what I see right now is the biggest context window, like let's even just say ChatGPT in a paid account, is 32K. In OpenAI, it's 128K. So it's a lot bigger. Now, it also
We were
uses,
talking about that just for additional context.
yeah,
The 32K versus 128K. That's what we're inputting, or is that the literal brain space that we
the
have to work
literal
with?
brain space. Yeah. And
Or is it
I think the
nothing?
metaphor is good, but they call it context window. It's like, how much
Sure.
can I keep in my head at one time?
Right. Right.
So it's a lot more. But even more importantly, the way it gets rid of excess context in the OpenAI direct relationship is using an algorithm of recency and frequency. So the stuff that I'm not talking about is the first stuff it gets rid of. So is it possible to hallucinate in OpenAI? For sure. Any system like that you can. is the likelihood there? Uh, Not for the type of stuff that we do. Like, I loaded up a, I figured out a way to scrape an entire website levels deep with one prompt. It came back with 650 pages of text. Every bit of text on that website is about 1.1 megs. Loaded it in, boom, it was just great. It handled it like a champ. There was no hallucination, there was no forgetfulness and this type of stuff. Why? Because I pay for it to do that. I'm paying by the compute rather than by the month.
The monthly fraction. Right. Right.
Right. So in that world, it'll whatever I want to give it, it'll process it, right? It'll process the heck out of it, but I pay for it. And so I
So,
say I in the royal I, meaning like using my platform. The key difference is that our clients are operating directly on top of OpenAI rather than through a chatbot, which is the consumer interface. And so we allow an unbridled access to the full robustness of AI. Now, the way
so
that
on the
we
one hand,
constrain, go
that
ahead.
would indicate there's more potential there. You can do a lot more stuff, a lot more complex stuff, a lot more complex and bigger stuff is what I'm hearing you
Right.
say there.
Well,
And
yeah.
you can prompt it with I think I'm hearing you say this. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You can prompt it with work to do that requires a lot more than just, a few sentence prompts for a simple task.
So it's fun. I'll grab a couple of things you said there. One, I reject the concept of prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is a necessary thing within the consumer chatbot because you're trying to get it to do things that it's not inherently wanting to do. So when you first log into ChatGPT, what are the prompts for you to do? What outfit should I wear to a party? How do I text my neighbors to come over for a barbecue on the weekend? Now, that's not helpful for you in writing for your subscribers. In fact, the stuff that you have to write about is so multidimensional that it consumes a lot more context window. You have to look at who's the audience, the persona, the type of company, the situation, which country are they from? Like there's so many different, and then there's impact of externalities like the economy or whatever. Like it as a chat bot, it's not good at doing that because you can't give it enough context about what
Right.
you're trying to write about. Now, the LLM has hundreds of billions of data points of stuff. It could tell you about quantum physics and how to raise a crop in the desert, but it's really awful at understanding the depth and the needs of your audience versus another publication and their audience and what your strategy is versus like it's awful. It doesn't decompose those ideas well at all. And so what we found, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of specific examples or occasions from my world where I've run into those very hurdles and tried to figure out how can I end run this thing? How can I duct tape a solution together?
Right.
How can I get
Right.
ChatGPT to give me something that's useful here? And I think what you're telling me is that under the current kind of format of my, how I'm accessing it, it just can't do what I'm asking it to do. A groundswell starts small, quietly building into something powerful, unstoppable. That's also how market momentum works. If you're launching a startup, introducing a new product, rebranding, or rolling out a new service or initiative, it's not enough to simply show up. You need to build momentum strategically. Specializing in go-to-market strategy, Groundswell works with organizations at every stage, creating custom plans that help products and brands break through the noise and grow, ensuring a launch that doesn't just happen, it sticks. From understanding your target audience to perfecting your positioning, Groundswell's approach ensures you're not just catching the market's attention, but keeping it. With expert guidance, your product moves from launch day to long-term success, turning that initial wave of excitement into sustained growth. If you're ready to take your product, service, or brand to market, it might be time to think about a groundswell strategy. Visit groundswell.cc to learn more. A couple of years ago, we produced a report where we researched the Fortune 100, went into their 10Q and 10K filings to look for language that would indicate that they're serious about CX and
Mm.
customer centricity. Not a very scientific approach, but we're looking for the language. If they're real about it, our theory was that it would show up in some of their investor and board materials. And it was a lengthy process, but it was ultimately very revealing.
Mhm.
So I'm a fairly new ChatGPT user. This is maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago, something like that. And I thought, how clever am I? I'm going to ask ChatGPT to do the very same thing, and laid it all out there in some very clear and concise instructions. And it came back and said, um, to the effect of, okay, here's how you do it. And I came back and said, no, I want you to do it. Oh,
Exactly.
sorry. Let me get to it. So over the next, it was probably 4 or 5 days, I went back and forth with ChatGPT saying, no, I want you to do it. It kept trying to shirk it off on me. And
Right.
I kept saying, no, this is your job. At one point it said, okay, I understand. I'm going to go do the work. And I think it was 2, 3 days later, it came back and said, okay, I've got your results here. And it gave me about 2 paragraphs of completely
Wow.
wasted time. It just was
Yeah.
not about doing this kind of work because of the size and complexity of it. So,
Right.
and I've since tried to duct tape and band-aid and stretch and twist prompts into it to do other kind of complex tasks, but have found no real solution at
Right.
all.
So the nature of the challenge isn't artificial intelligence. It's the manner in which you're connecting to it and trying to use it. Um, and I mean, to be really candid, it's because you're paying by the month. I mean,
Right.
you know, I have days where I can, just me working in one of my instances, I could spend $20 a day in compute. I'm pushing big files around, asking questions, but I can get back, you know, 2,000 word chunks of, content that are like so robust, so human quality. It, it blows people away. I mean, frankly, it really blows them away. And the challenge here that I think, I'm looking at it for content these days for a couple different reasons. One, I think that's what a lot of people are thinking of it for. It's a good use case, creation of content or strategy, ideas, things like that. Um, Two, it has a low perceived risk. I'm not putting up your company financial statements,
Right.
like lower perceived risk. And three, the upside is so huge. And why is that? It's because writing good content is hard. The average human could put 2 to 3 ideas together simultaneously to analyze something and write. But oftentimes the stuff that you need to write about are 8 or 10 or 15 different dimensions.
Right.
And unless you have that, what do they call it? The unconscious competence on a topic, you're going to fail at it. And so the vast majority, and I say this as a marketer, as a person who's, run content teams and writes a lot of content, most marketing content is, anywhere from awful to not great.
You're being kind.
And it's, I say that in a self-deprecating manner. I mean, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And, people talk about highly personalized content as being elusive. And it's exactly this point. To get highly personalized, you have to look outside in and understand the nature of that persona and their situation and their needs, their challenges and objectives, and then how what you do provides value in what areas. And like it's so complex for the human mind to do, but AI, it's not smart, I don't think, but I think that it's just built to look at things multidimensionally. And it does that really well. And so in this use case of content and strategy, it just it's mind blowing what it can do.
Yeah, I would love to just see what that looks like in the real world, um, I play with ChatGPT quite frequently, and I think it's really good at outlines. It's
Mhm.
really
Yeah,
good at putting together an outline, which gives me a
right,
framework to write from. It is terrible, and I mean terrible, at writing with any kind of a human feel. You can see
right,
right through this stuff.
right.
It's got no heart or mind behind it. It's got a lot of data, but that's not a human there. And I've had a lot of fun, frustrating fun, trying to get it to do otherwise, but it's just not going to.
So a couple of different things. The amount of instructions and training data and prompt that you can push into that system, it's tiny compared to what you need to get it to write well. Now, in writing well, there's several different things. Um, it knows so much about everything, but it understands the world in a very vanilla way. It doesn't know how to really decompose it into, we talked before about your audience and their need, the persona, the whatever. Like, it doesn't really do that well. And so what we do is we train a corpus of data that it knows how to digest well, that's specific to a client and their particular audiences and needs and capabilities and solutions and all this type of stuff. We take the work on up front so a client can just chat with it, just talk. No prompt engineering at all. We also do a lot of work around um, deciphering writing style, voice, things like that. And so, negative, a lot of words. We define audiences and personas at a really good level. It can digest that really well, but you can't do it with a couple of pages and a few thousand characters of a prompt.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so what we get, and I showed you a couple of weeks ago, is like you start to have a conversation with it, and you say, "Oh, hey, tell me about this really minute point here. Wow, let outline a 2,500 word article on this topic." And it gives you a very robust, super detailed, very granular, and on message response back. Now, context is something that I talk about a lot, and not just the context window, but this is that idea of when we tell it, when we decompose a client's information and put it up there, we're giving it context to the situation of what you as a writer, exactly what you need, who you're talking to, why, we connect all that stuff together for the LLM. So it doesn't have to think about it. Now, functionally, what it's doing is that data, the query and instructions go up, it shops for information, pushes it into OpenAI, where we allow OpenAI to look outside of that our information about 20% of its aperture. So we're not relying upon it to know about your readers and their needs and a particular topic. Like, we tell it all about that. So it's coming at it with your point of view already, which causes us to be able to get around what you were just talking about.
So, talk to us a little bit about the specific use cases. And, I know in prior conversations, you've kind of targeted sales and marketing operations as
Mhm.
key users. But how might one of those groups use the platform, and what do you anticipate? What are they seeing as a result?
So I have several different use cases right now. In fact, just this morning, signed an agreement with an SEO company. The person I'm working with there is frazzled. I mean, they're having a blessing of a lot of work to do, and it's just really hard and time consuming to come up with the creative brief, to write a page, to do this and this. Like, and we started doing some demo tests where it's like it's so easy now because we're training it on the corpus of data for their client. It's not trying to guess. We're not trying to have to tell it how to think. Like, we've already told it up front. And so content creation, short and long form, video briefs for short videos, scene selection and scripts and things like that. Translation to 5, 6, common languages, fantastic at it.
Wow.
Now, something, the more specific you get with it, the more differentiated it becomes. So if you're talking to it and saying, hey, this persona, that industry, this need set, this solution, this, challenge, whatever, this environmental variable, the more specific you get, the more it stands out because the human mind can't do that. And so when you see
Which,
it, it's like, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I would just say, which with ChatGPT, it's just the opposite result.
Right,
Higher specificity and input, more generic the output.
right, right. I agree. Yeah, that's my 10,000 hours of, Gladwell experience there is, yeah, been there, done that. The other thing that's interesting is sales strategy or sales enablement. So we we instruct an instance differently. We instruct it to the salesperson. We have a couple formats. They could have a conversation and get their answer, or they can just like select buttons. It's from this industry, that firm size, this role. Oh, it's a different role. I'm gonna type the role in. It's their challenge is this. My objective in this meeting is that, and it'll come up with, hey, here's the top 3 topics this person is likely interested in. Here's prompting questions to see if they are interested in it. If they are, here's some discovery questions. Like, and it guides them through a conversation of what might this person be most likely interested in. And my experience with this is in any organization, the top 10% of sellers understand about 50 to 70% of what the company can do. It kind of drops to the x-axis pretty quickly. And as you get further out on the tail, the more people either have 1 or 2 things that they know how to talk about, and then the broken clock is right twice a day occurs, and they
Right.
get a sale, or they just, frankly, I've seen people just make stuff up, and
Right.
then it's like, oh, can't we do that? Oh, I thought we could, and oh, we got to figure out how to do it, and whereas you use this, and you could have anybody on the team become 70 to 90% knowledgeable. And not that they had to go into months of learning, but they could just describe their situation in very detailed manner and get a great answer back.
So the quality of the output is based on Symplexity AI's ability to ingest specific language so that it builds context for, the company, the use case, the audience, the whatever,
Right.
all of
Right.
that. To me, being a non-technical person, that sounds like a heck of a lot of work and time involved to get that to create that learning. In reality, what does it look like? If someone
Yeah.
who's listening to this is thinking this could be a lifesaver, which it sure sounds like it could be,
I hope.
what's involved in integrating it into their workflow? I mean, of course, costs
Yeah.
aside, but how long would it take? A mid-market marketing company to kind of be active in using Symplexity.
So I was, I'm one of the founders. And so a lot of this stuff, I actually did the beating my head on a wall until we figured it out type of thing. And what you're talking about here, it's an interesting challenge because it's not a technical challenge and it's not a business challenge. It's in the middle. And still today, I don't see any documentation of how to organize training data that performs nearly as well as what we've been able to get at all. So, to the nature of your question, our goal is that you come to me with a need. We have a series of questionnaire to go through, and we ask for data. We sign an NDA and all that type of stuff. We do the work for you. Most people that we talk to have some level of anxiety over AI or a lack of knowledge, and it just seems like, holy cow, this is ominous. I don't know what to do. So just say, look, we'll run a demo. Okay, cool, that works great. Here's how you use it. And we do the onboarding. It's typically a couple of days of work on our part, but You just described multiple situations where we spent days fruitlessly
Oh,
get,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
right? So the I think that is one of the things that's undercalculated is the opportunity cost of your time working with tools that aren't going to get you where you need to go. You can't out prompt them, and prompt engineering shouldn't be a thing. The thing is context, and that's that training information. And then there's another layer that sits just in front of that where we program it to understand what are you trying to accomplish? Who are you trying to talk to? What are the output formats you're looking for? What is your writing style and brand voice? And all of this stuff goes adjacent to that so that you just as a human approach it and start. I like to say talk to it, have a conversation, but you just start typing like, hey, tell me about, this aspect of that. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, I like that idea here. Let's talk more about that. Tell me. And it's super easy. That's the whole thing. We try to make it so easy. Anybody of any technical capacity could just type some English and get a human quality on brand response back. That's our goal.
You know, we talked about this a little bit in our earlier conversation, but it brings to mind all of these studies that are coming out lately about how much companies are about to budget for investments into AI, and it's this
Right.
giant, you know,
Right.
big chunks of technology, big chunks of marketing budget being
Mhm.
pointed at AI,
Yeah.
big chunks of supply chain, anything that requires a lot of computation. But I think one of the things you've brought up in these conversations is the very human hesitancy to
Yeah.
actually engage with this. It's one thing to deploy AI as a data analyst
Mhm.
to analyze your stuff, huge quantities of data, and come out with, with something useful on the other end. But as a non-technical person, as a non-data analyst,
Yeah.
there's enormous power in AI if you can figure out what to do with it. And it sounds like your approach here is specifically geared toward getting this tool set in front of the broader audience
Right.
so that it can be useful. I'm
Right.
paraphrasing, but that's kind of my big takeaway from our couple of conversations.
You know, when I was beating my head up on the consumer chatbots, I just finally stopped and asked myself, it's like, if this is all that AI is, why is this even making noise right now? It's interesting, but it's only modestly interesting for a business to look at it. And that's where I kind of, after many hours, figured this whole thing out. Now, one of the things that you're heading towards in the conversation is, you know, how today most organizations do not have a policy. They do not have a conversation going on internally about how should we use it, what should we do. I wrote an article on Martech a month ago, but I brought up a process that we use, and the idea is the plan. The second one is the use case, the need. So I think these are iterative cycles where you have to go, okay, use case and need, use case and need. Okay, okay, great. We figured out where we can create value in the organization. Third step, the goal. And the goal has to be effectiveness. So everybody talks about efficiency, but efficiency is a byproduct of what AI can do. But if you don't focus on effectiveness, you're just going to scale garbage. Like
Right.
focus on what is it that creates output that you need and solve that, and it will become more effective on its own. The next one is the challenge. The challenge is context. And that's really what I have focused on with our organization is the tool should be built to wrap around you and not you around it. And today that's the biggest challenge with AI adoption is people think that they have to, go to prompt engineering school and, get a degree in something. It's like, no, that's you're just using the wrong tool. It's not built for you. Um, and then the path is the last one. And there you have native applications like ChatGPT, Claude, things like that. You have embedded solutions you'll find in your major like uh,
Gemini,
systems
et
of
cetera.
record.
Yeah.
Well, so the first one, native Gemini and all that, Claude, ChatGPT,
Right.
but embedded solutions would be like, in your systems of record and systems of measurement around your company. There's AI that starts to natively get involved or, embedded into that system. And then the third is purpose built, and that's what we do at Symplexity. But those are the three kind of channels that you can start to explore, try to make it real.
I don't know if this is even practical or feasible, but I think that just having seen it kind of over your shoulders in a prior conversation, I'm fascinated by it. I think it's for what we do here in our operation could be transformative. I'm going to invite anybody who's listening to this who's as intrigued as I am to visit Symplexity AI's site. And if we're lucky enough, this is an ask, prepare yourself, uh, to set up some sort of a working demo where
Mhm.
anybody who's on our site can access your site if for nothing else than to just to see what it is
Sure.
or something like that because this is what everyone knows ChatGPT to be,
Mhm.
um, unthrottled.
Right.
And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. With that, Mark, thank you for this. I really appreciate it. I think you're onto
Mike,
something that's
thanks.
certainly a big deal. I think it's a huge deal for SMBs who
Mm.
who are who finally have some way to access this giant, tool brain
Yeah.
and do something useful with it. Um, but on an enterprise level, I'm just thinking of the dozens and dozens of marketing operations and CX operations that I know of where they're deploying AI, but it's for giant computational purposes,
Mhm.
not not using it as powerfully as they could to get some of the day-to-day grunt work done. To do, as you said, it becomes about efficiency, but allows us worker types to really focus on outcomes and not so much about outputs.
Right on. Hey, Mike, it's been fantastic. I'm really happy that you invited me here, and it's always great to talk to you.
Well, thank you. So let's do this again.